That's fine.
They live longer than that. Between the owls, the hawks, and the fox, actually all three were taken out. We purchased 2 of the 3 and found the feathers from the hawk on the third one.
That's right.
They live in the country, backyard.
You're talking about raising an Easter?
10 years ago, we brought some duck chicks about Easter, like Rural King and brought them home. And they grew up and they're fun. But we did have a coyote. I had a big dog, and one day the dog started growling. I look out the window and there's a coyote that run and grab a duck out the door.
Our Mrs. Adventure back already.
Ducks live. And we had a fox take one out. We watched that, we couldn't get to it in time. And we had an owl take one out.
Well, I grew up in an era when they used to dye those little chickens at Easter, purple and or the other color. You could buy them in the dime store.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And
I never got one.
now we have kids dyeing their hair that color too. So.
Well, now they do that. So it's kind of gone from chickens to people.
Okay, Tim, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
Hey Sam.
How are you?
I didn't see you back there.
Yes, sir.
I didn't even notice you. Sorry.
Trying to stay under the radar.
It's 6:36 p.m. on February 28th, 2024. I'm going to call the Finance Committee of the Village of Hampton Hills to order. I'll take the roll. Timothy?
Present.
Craig?
Present.
And myself, we have the quorum. Mark, did you have a comment about?
Yes, we received a resignation letter of Michael O'Dwyer, just not a letter, it was more of a email text to Barb that he didn't list anything other than he was at this time leaving.
Okay, any questions? Okay, well, the purpose of tonight is to get a final recommendation, look at the budget. Mark says it balances now, which is always a good sign, and make a recommendation to the board. So, Tim.
And Tim and I took what the direction, and Michael was instrumental in that last time, saying, okay, on some of those smaller items that we're not going to go into detail and we didn't put a number in.
Right.
We took the direction, I think, of the consensus of the group was to take the last 3 years actuals and some of those smaller line items, and whether it averaged 1,500 or 3,000.
Right, or bump it up a little bit, 5%.
Massage it.
Okay.
And one line that we did talk about with Chief Levan, when he said that there was an issue with subscriptions being overly on the 8-month actual problem. And that is because we didn't have a line item in the budget for Fire and Police Commission to conduct their activities related to a hiring list and or reviewing an officer before they are offered a position full-time of polygraph, psychological testing, and a background investigation. So we did need to bump an item into that dollar amount for a line that is new to the budget. I don't know in the history we've ever really had that, but that's going to be an additional, I think, $5,000 that we're going to just put in there to make sure it's enough money to conduct those 3 things. And the chief did speak to that, so it was not, but that'll lower the subscriptions down to the average 3-year average, and then we'll put that in the proper place.
Okay.
So Tim?
Okay. So we're going to primarily focus on the general fund here. I think a good starting point is, I've already distributed it to you, but we're looking at $3.1 million of revenue and just over $3 million in expenses, giving us a surplus of $93,000 in the budget. And that is based on some of the input we received last week. If you look through some of those pages, and I'll put them up here on the screen too, I have some comments here where it says FC approved, that's Finance Committee approved. So a lot of these revenue items we've already looked at. They've been approved by the Finance Committee yesterday or last week. That doesn't mean we can't change them again, but that's where we stood last week. And just going through the whole budget, you can see some of these are 5% increased by 5%. This one line item, it's 76 on your handout, general legal services. I put that at $75,000. That was the suggestion last week. I don't think that's completely unreasonable, but I just wanted to make it clear. I left the building and zoning at $24,000, which is what it was budgeted last year. That's kind of, I think, separate from some of the legal issues that are concerned to many of the finance committee members and village trustees. So, any comment on that or communication?
Can we go back to the first page?
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks. So the taxes, well, no, it's not really a tax. The state funding,
That's what it is, yes.
yes, wrong camp. So the state funding, that's a 5% decrease, right?
Right.
That, I get that. The
Mhm.
license and fees, remind me of the adjustment on that.
Let's go down. Some of these we probably just could even increase a little bit. Licensing fees, where are those?
That was line 3.
Let me just make sure I got that right. 46.
He's doing income.
46, yeah. Supervision,
Yeah, I don't know why that's not. There it is. So we're looking at liquor license, we said 17.5, Comcast franchise fee, 120,000. Some of those other ones I didn't really touch. That make sense?
Which one though were you looking at, Tim?
Well, he's looking at this overall 155,
Right.
and that's what makes it up.
so it's a reduction in the Comcast fees over the prior year, is where the big hit is, right?
Yeah, cause that was,
And we're not getting any fees here either, it's 26,000.
and then I think we took a look at,
That was based on
the
the
three,
numbers,
the
right?
3-year
Yeah.
average
Yeah.
of actuals.
Right.
Cause 144 was a banner year that isn't repeated.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Sure.
And then-
The question I have, Tim, is a more global question. Is your income item of 3,145,000, does that represent 100% of our expected revenue or 95?
95%.
Okay, so we haven't changed that
No.
parameter.
No. So the big issue, this is a big issue, the big items that reflect this $93,000 surplus, well, you can see what the revenue is and expenditure, but some of the assumptions I made is the general transfer out, $300,000, as opposed to $650 last time. Additionally, our contingency, I bumped up from $120,000 we budgeted last year to $125,000 this year. We didn't use too much of the contingency thus far this year. But that's a common budgeting practice, you throw in a contingency.
We've always had.
Yeah, I mean, there's many ways to, I don't wanna say use the word pad, but you kinda have to put a little bit of,
Contingency.
yeah, contingency. Yeah, some people actually put the line contingency.
That's the right word.
It is the right word, because it's an estimate of how much,
Right.
for example, legal fees could be.
Right.
We didn't expect, when the budget was done last year, to have the legal fees related to the police chief issue. And that's, really blown that out of the water. If we didn't have a contingency, we'd be in trouble.
Some municipalities will reduce their expected revenue, which we do a little bit by 5%. I've seen other municipalities just state it right up front, we're gonna increase every line item expenditure by 15%. So there's many ways to handle it, but I don't think $125,000 contingency line item is imprudent given the size of the budget. And other things that are in here, if you look through, scroll through your document, or I've put it here, is we spent a lot of time talking about the police. We have put in the 6% increase for the police department. We've assumed a 28,000 longevity bonuses, 1,500 increase in uniform allowance. We assume that half of the hours that were not covered by full-time equivalent, officers were gonna be covered by part-time at $30 an hour. And the remaining hours would be covered by overtime by the full-time equivalent officers.
Worst case.
Worst case, yes.
And
Just a reminder, the chief was good with all of these.
he was, and you note, the full-time staffing we used is 7.5. We've not had, you know, you're not gonna have half a body, but for budget purposes, it was more.
So, if I, I think to communicate this, 49% of our expenditures are going to police, all in. If I do the math right.
Okay, I haven't done the math, but that wouldn't surprise me.
So, I get it.
Historically,
Yes.
that's
I understand.
in line.
I just, well, we're now being recorded. I want that out there. So we've done an awful lot to support the police. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to fund it, right? We're continuing to add staff and resources. But at this stage, we're at 49% of the village's gross income.
That is accurate.
48 point something around it. I like to round.
And if I'd like to add to that comment, the prudence of this finance committee and village in general over the last 17 years you've been around, you have probably gotta be one of the highest funded pension funds in the state. And you look at over 650 pension
We're
funds in the
actually,
state.
as of last year, we're only one of 20 communities that's
Over 100%.
over 100%
Yeah.
in the entire state
Very impressive. Okay.
so far.
That list isn't growing.
No. Okay.
So I don't know if there's any other line items in these general fund, departments you'd like to discuss. I do have
The highlighted information tech, 104, line 104, is
sure.
there a reason for that?
Oh, cause that was internally for me. I was kinda hoping that before I presented here, I was hoping to get some information from the new technology department or, committee and see if they had any input on this, so I could get a little bit more substance to the budget. I just not had time to do that.
They are meeting tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
So I think,
Yes, thank you.
are you able to get more information from them at the meeting or?
Well,
separately?
I don't think we will. I mean, it's gonna be they got so many
It's a new committee, correct?
good committee, and they're not gonna get deep into a lot of these things.
It won't be less. The County Technology Committee, it will not be less than what they're asking for.
Well aware of that.
And the capital budget right now this year, we still have a decision to make in this current budget year, a new server versus going to a cloud. They're gonna help that decision on May 1st. So that won't be a capital number for next year because it's already programmed for this year's budget.
And I know we talked about this, again, I'm just trying to reconfirm on, police services salaries regular. The adjustment from the baseline to this year is because by adding, police and, law enforcement, we're reducing overtime.
Check.
Is that what I recall?
Yes.
Because of the Chief Levan's presentation that we do have coordination with some part-timers that are gonna make it through process with the Board of Fire and Police to potentially move from part-time if they pass those background checks in psych and poly, that they would become full-timers in May, June, and July.
Right, over 3
And
months.
we're
yeah.
still proposing a 6% increase in wages?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a nice adjustment.
What?
That's a nice adjustment.
Well, that, plus they get the bonus.
I'm talking about the salaries regular.
And then on the other, one employee that's a general full-time employee, we have one.
Right.
And we're projected, didn't we say 3.5 somewhere?
Four.
Yeah, and because we have then one full-timer, and then we have,
Two part-time, three part-time, three.
yeah, 3, which is,
Myself, the receptionist, and somebody in building and zoning.
and then a contract employee of services for zoning administration.
Right,
Contract employees do not show up in the salary line, they show up under a contract line.
right.
And as is my position.
You're a contractor too? Okay.
You're not up for full-time?
I'm sorry?
You're not up for full-time, police?
No,
Alright. Just checking.
I'm trying to think what other
that's every,
areas that
that's
are.
every
When,
budget
when,
we have.
when are we retiring, when is Kona retiring?
This year. By, Chief Levan said by September.
So how many, we have a pretty sizable canine
Yeah.
unit expenditure. Is there room there?
There is, and no expectation to get another animal because of an animal handler and the commitment. He's not recommended it. There is gonna be some desire, I suspect, from some quarters to continue
Right.
the canine because it's such a beloved thing in the school, say no to drugs programs and other things. But for the most part, on the canine's use, we're a lot of times helping other agencies because the times, James can't think of a time where he's used a dog in
In the field.
Right.
the field in Campton Hills. So it's hard for me to recommend and justify as it is for him to continue it other than the community relations aspect, but it's an expensive thing for community relations.
Originally, Kona was 100% funded by donations. And when did that shift? I mean, you guys don't have the history, and I don't remember it shifting. I thought it was 100% funded by citizen donations.
I've always heard that.
That's my recollection. I mean, that's what it was.
Right.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. You're right.
So,
The canine donations and revenue, there's been 63, 51, 40, 28,000.
There's a pot somewhere.
And there is a balance.
Balance of how, right, that,
Right.
There's a balance, I think, what, 60?
There's a balance, but there's not a separate department or fund dedicated to him, so, I mean, technically there's a balance, but it really belongs to the general fund.
right.
So my understanding is,
There were some-
after COVID, there was less kind of, events kind of with Coda there and gave them an opportunity to generate revenue like they had in the past. But they do still have people that one individual I know every year comes in with a $5,000 check, regardless.
I wonder if we maybe suggest or recommend that when Kona retires, if there's still donations in the general fund, somehow we set that aside specifically for, police use at a later date and time. It was donated for Kona.
Sure.
No, I would agree, from a public standpoint,
People,
we need to be careful.
Yeah, because I think there was some controversy of the last administrator and village president used some money of that line item to cover another expense, but and it wasn't in the police department and there was controversy. It's not illegal, but
Right.
it looks
It looks bad.
to the
The
perception.
optics are not
but
good.
I think it's a good point to actually call that out as this needs to be,
Right, so what we can do is try to discern between what James thinks is the true number and what we actually have in the Cassell software of remaining balance, and what James thinks will be expended for Coda's care this next budget year. But Coda's gonna live on, he's not gonna retire and be euthanized, he's gonna continue in some level, so there'll be some funding that should be devoted
Right.
to his continued veterinary care, which a lot of it is donated too.
Yeah.
So our expense for the canine has been pretty minimal
Could we
because of
remove this,
donations.
could we move this line item then? For the K-9 unit expenditure? Well, I guess not,
No,
no,
no, we're in the general fund, we gotta stay in the general fund.
we gotta have a line to expend money out of that.
You're right,
Yeah.
I'm a little slow on that one.
Mhm.
But I think maybe we should think it through, but maybe a motion to recommend, well,
We need to, I don't think we need a motion to do it, I think it stay parked there, except I think that, but we tell the public about what's gonna happen with not replacing the dog, et cetera.
And what monies will be utilized
Utilized,
for
right.
his
I mean,
continued life.
it's gotta be a positive, and if in fact we think that we do have a surplus, then either we find a place in this police department, or we donate it to the sheriff's department with their dog, or something like that.
Well, we're gonna have additional expenses in the evidence
There's
room to stay up to standards and code. Like today, they, for instance, are asking for money to finish the hardening of the room. They ran hardwired mesh to kind of separate it, but they didn't make a division for some evidence that needs to be separate from other evidence, like a murder or assault area versus drugs and money. They need a separate way of division that, as well as there's drywall on the stairwell that somebody could pound through and bounce into the evidence room that we just thought we secured. So I looked at it today and with the new evidence person and said, "Are we confident here?" And she goes, "I already said that's why I asked you to come down and see if you'd notice that." So we're gonna continually, as we have a more professional person, we're gonna have costs and evidence that I can't even
But we
detail
have to
that.
get our communication up front.
Yes, and so you could say, if you just did a generic recommendation next Wednesday night, that we try to use any balance of the code of funds in specifically not to expend them on any other general fund item other than a police-related area.
Because
I
that's
think
where
that-
the people gave them money.
And that, I think,
So
wouldn't
you don't wanna move it, community relations, I would stick with the police.
that would be a good policy, and there's gonna be expenses that we didn't totally foresee.
that's the fifth is the board meeting,
Next Tuesday.
yeah, I can't.
I can't make it either, we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah, I can make it, but I can't run.
You're running the show.
I'm not running the show.
Don't do it more.
Well, it could be Mark and Tim do it.
You know what, gentlemen, if that's the case, cause I kinda figured Michael was gonna carry the water on that.
Michael would have carried it.
We could, I don't think the board would be offended if we set up another date, if the majority of the board, especially if Deborah can't be there either.
Deborah, I think, can be, Craig can.
Well,
Timothy and I'm in Austin on a 3-day IRS audit, so,
And I'm leading the regional meeting that day.
so it's literally,
well, if you're comfortable with Deborah and Craig.
I mean, I would, honestly, you guys have a lot more history in this, so.
But our recommendations tonight and what's been done, I mean,
right.
it's the committee's recommendation.
Great.
But in the past, we've had joint meetings. We also had the administrator last year actually give the presentation. Michael and I chimed in, but it was done by the administrator.
Correct.
And we can do that again next week with Tim and I leading it, and you can comment to it. I think we'll be fine.
You okay?
Sure.
Plus you have another member there too, right?
Yeah,
Deborah.
Deborah will be there as well. Oh, hopefully.
Deborah does presentations for a living under day
Yeah,
job,
she
so
does.
she'll
She's smooth.
she'll jump in if needed.
Yeah, I did it 2-3 times and they still asked me to stay on the committee. It's all right.
All good.
It's all right.
Okay,
All right.
Tim.
Do you wanna review any of the other, funds?
We also had, 191 maybe highlighted as well, or 192, can't tell.
192.
Oh, 192.
Engineering services?
Oh, that's a different fund, correct?
No, okay.
Right there, it's still in general.
Yeah, that's,
I think we had that because Michael was questioning, with the HR Green for the road program. We do have fees, and we were gonna try to true on that up, because we're we can see exactly with spending $750 in the road program, how much is the engineering? It's gonna be about 18%, 20% of that number. So, what's 20% of 750, Tim?
What do we look like?
150.
Yeah, 150.
Yeah, so we might be light in that
Did I
department.
say 750?
Yeah,
150, there you go. 150?
yeah, we'll have to change that to 26 then. That's gonna hurt our balance. But we use MFT money for that too, so I don't know, we don't wanna, we gotta be careful on how that, we
Well,
don't double.
are you talking about for
double
the
tap.
roads?
Yes.
I don't think that would be in the building and zoning department.
No,
That would be in
this-
MFT.
So this was the 26 was all Trotter reviewing.
Right, right.
And you know what? Guys, that's gonna be fine because that's based on some true 3-year averages for Trotter to do like the Shodine properties each time. But then there would be a corresponding revenue side to Shodine or whoever has a permit has to pay that fee. So that really ends up being
Being a wash.
a wash. We just have to make sure that number is carried over on the
Right,
revenue side too. Maybe that's why Michael asked us to highlight it.
okay.
Let's double check that. I think he said something to that effect, right?
I think it's ringing a bell now that you
Yeah.
mention it.
Because the fees for the roads are gonna be tied into the general, into the capital MFT account. Sorry, confused me. Yeah, see, under building and zoning, we've got variance and driveway access, we probably need to engineering permits, cause that is a straight up cost that is borne by the permittee
Is,
for Trotter Engineering.
do you have them come out and look at that?
Yeah, they do, they are heavily involved with stormwater management on each large site development of any kind.
That might be why it's highlighted, because maybe when we brought it down to $20,000, I thought that corresponding expense should also be brought down.
Right, yeah, that was your
Yeah.
point. The
That's
other
what
night.
it was. So $26,000 should probably be less, because if we're only bringing $20,000 in revenue.
Yeah. We gotta make the two should match.
So the most this will be $20,000, but I suspect it'll be even less. So that $93,000 surplus would be $99,000. Right here. If we felt that $20,000 was a good number.
But Craig, you're new, but when somebody asks for a permit, especially the main developer with the Norton Homes, the Trotter Engineering outfit does come out, and then there's a fee, and it's feed out, and then it's directly to whoever
Yep.
has the permit pays that.
Yeah, if they match up.
Yes.
And some of the other funds, the finance committee could definitely make some recommendations, but I think the village board is gonna have some of their own opinions on how some of these expenditures are gonna shape
Yeah, we
out.
should talk a little bit about the road and bridge.
Right, so especially capital expenditures, I did not put anything in the capital expenditures. We have $300,000 coming in, but I don't have any of it spent. I know they do like to always get a new police vehicle every year, but we talked about leasing that
Leasing.
also, so.
Yeah. And right now with using the ARPA dollars to rehab this building, a lot of the issues have been taken care of.
Alright, so, what you say the board will have some opinions on this based on this,
Well, the road,
besides road.
road and bridge, there is an intergovernmental agreement with the Canton Township Highway Department, and all of the revenue from the state, the IML magazine page, whatever, of fees and monies that come in on our levy for that road and bridge, 100% of that is by the intergovernmental agreement passed on to the township to do general maintenance. But if they have above and beyond that general maintenance, and we get into winter and have snow events,
That's it.
the MFT will end up being drawn down at some level based on blizzard and salt and operations potentially. So we haven't got those bills yet, but Ray has alerted us, I think today he came by to kind of tell me he had one coming.
That's nice of them.
Don't get too excited about overspending on roads next year, Ronnie, 'cause I
Can I
might
say
need
something
some.
on
So
behalf of Public Works?
What's that?
Can I say something on behalf of Public
Yeah.
Works?
Please.
I was under the impression you cannot use MFT for anything other than road construction
No.
and not,
Salt and the manpower to spread the salt is an approved use for MFT.
is it?
Lighting, I believe lighting on the roads can be.
Yeah, but we don't have that here, thank goodness, because
Right.
dark sky ordinance is coming through, baby, to not spend money.
In the past, it all came out of road and bridge.
Yeah, and that was one of the arguments I think that former President Terrell was having with them, saying, hey, we're giving you 100% of the road and bridge, you shouldn't have anything, a call on the MFT, but they're saying, hey, we can document that we expended by October this year. They expended the entire road and bridge fund on items they invoiced us for. And then all winter, we had potential for snowstorms that end up drawing that down. It's not that much, but it's
Certainly
not
less than
zero.
all the years. I mean, it was a mild winter, right? So we always get that bill after the fact, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that conversation in the past, I just don't know the dollar amounts.
And this year it'll be a little bigger than it was the previous two years.
Why is that?
Well, we had two big snow events that they spent a lot of time on, salting and.
Probably a lot of overtime.
Really?
Really only like one, right?
Yeah,
No, there were
there's two.
two of them.
Continue.
There was a nice event too.
Well, it was like the next
Yeah,
day again.
Basically, continue,
the Iowa Snowplowing Company that I do the work for, and the overtime went crazy, but in that 1 week,
Yeah.
because the boys was working with hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 1 week, two events.
I don't remember two snows, two accumulations.
Mhm.
I know.
March isn't done yet, Timothy.
That's true.
And just to be clear, this road and bridge revenue, this does not come in throughout the entire year, typically comes in the first 8 months. So this is really the number. We extrapolated it out, there was no need to, we're never gonna get that number. We'll probably get this number. So just be careful as you see that extrapolated out. We're not gonna get
So then
800.
why are we extrapolating?
We probably should.
That's how we did it through the whole model, we didn't finish it, but.
We need to take that off. The
Did it?
model,
We'll
well,
change it.
let's change that one.
Yeah, we did that for the starting point, but yeah, if it's realistic, not realistic, it doesn't make sense to continue that model.
On that
On
line,
a specific-
on that line.
Right, yes, that we know better.
Ooh, I just learned something, that's nice. It's a nice little trick.
And then if we keep going down, then where obviously the MFT money is the primary driver of your capital revenues.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of the,
For roads anyway.
yeah, oh, you wanna go up to MFT? I'm sorry.
And even though every year we won't have a rebuild Illinois bond, potentially we keep that line item in case if something comes down from the state. And
So these numbers here were derived from the Illinois Municipal League's estimates, so they got hopefully a bunch of smart economists predicting what the number will be, and much better than anyone here could do.
they've been pretty accurate
Yeah, I
over the
think
years.
so.
long as everybody doesn't buy a Tesla or a Volt, we're okay. If they start doing that, we won't have as much revenue, guys.
That's an interesting problem.
So this area here is where I think more of the holistic discussion between Mark and the village board will take place, how to spend that money and what kind of engineering, maybe do a lot of engineering in fiscal year 25 to spend it in fiscal year 26, and you don't just decide on Monday to build a road and then build it on Tuesday, so it's a little bit beyond my.
But it's kind of every year built into the road program we accept in April. They talk about it in February, and then in April the bids come back, and part of that bid will have part of that money will be the engineer's cost of.
Alright, so you gotta help me, why don't we have this budgeted for 25?
Because if I'm not mistaken, the year before, they didn't spend anything, and they doubled it up like the next year, which was this year. I am not in a position to say if we're gonna spend that or not. I don't know where we stand with the engineering company, if we're planning to use them in fiscal year 25.
Yeah, we are.
I'll let Mark just.
Yeah, we're probably gonna, well, I think that was the line item that we showed, Tim, about needing $3 million a year, but we hope to only have funded $1 million. We're not gonna, and without revenue enhancements recommendation, guys, there is no way we're ever gonna get to $1 million of what you wanna say is funded capital roads without revenue enhancements. There just is no flex. The 125 contingency not being spent, being added to this 500,000 plus or minus MFT is 6.25 at best. So if you're gonna try to get from 6.25 to say 750 every year even, we're gonna have revenue enhancements to get to $1 million.
But that goes back, if we're doing a budget and we think we're gonna do engineering services, we need to put something in our budget.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's where
I just don't know what it is.
Oh, okay.
So I
We
just,
agree that we
so
need to
we
have
can
something in the
estimate, and that's where I was getting, if we're gonna get this, say, this next year to be 750, 20% on average across all municipalities is what the engineering cost is.
So that's 150,000.
So you might not get $750,000 worth of asphalt. Your total spend would be $750 asphalt plus the engineering and oversight fees. So that gets you even lower on the miles getting done every year.
But we expect to spend engineering services no matter what.
Yes.
Well, I don't know what's in the pipeline. They might have already done engineering services for roads, we just didn't have the money to do it. If you see here,
Yeah.
we budgeted $473,000 this year, we spent $1 million, and why did we do that? Because the year before, we didn't spend any of that money,
Yeah.
and we spent it all this year.
HR Green was directed to do the engineering on the next round,
Yes.
and I don't know, I haven't had any updates from Scott on where he's standing with that.
And by Tuesday night, I'll have that number that we're just banting about, because he's promised me, he knows he needs it, get it to me.
Okay, so you'll put it in.
I'll put it in
Okay.
before Tuesday night.
But we're
Based on what his actual engineering fees are gonna be for this year's road program that has been extended.
So there goes our 93,000 over.
Possibly.
Yep.
I mean, we are confident we'll get this, but how we're gonna spend it, I'm not sure. I put in a placeholder for snow removal and trees
Tim.
based on that budget.
Tim, maybe truly not, because we'll end up we might subtract out one road of the expected program to make sure that we're all in.
But that's kind of the trade-off, and that's what the
Yeah.
budget we have to send forward, so they know what decisions they're making.
Yes. And I'll need the actual numbers from the
Right.
HR Green,
Right.
and I'll have that by Monday or Tuesday night. He's promised me.
Yeah. Well, but But that's the trade-off part.
Yes, it is.
And so we need to point that out. We have to have a budget, and then if the board wants to change it, this is how it's gonna work. And change the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, we only have so many dollars, so
Right.
you
Right.
might do
And
one
that's
less
the
road.
issue that has to be forced.
And then they may choose to do the roads that can be the 200 to 250 fix instead of the full 400 to 450.
That's what they get the big bucks for.
Well, and that's why the Public Works Committee and the engineering staff said we need to do the robotics pavement analysis so it takes into account not just what you see on the surface, but the subsurface, how long any engineered project is gonna last based on the subsurface more than what you see driving down the road.
It needed to be updated too, because that was 5 years old,
It was, yes.
and they've deteriorated.
Yeah.
And therein lies the tomato debate that President Terrell was having with me, saying, oh, you can't say it's 450 on every road. Well, and from my experience in talking to an engineer on these roads in this village, you have a lot of roads that are in the red or orange failing that are gonna be in the 400 to 450 to replace properly. That if you spend 200, you might get 8 to 10 years. And if you would ever take my recommendation and do a referendum for $10 million, you don't do bond money and put 20 years on your PIN number, your personal tax bills, and have an engineered project that the engineer and the professionals are telling you it's only gonna last 12 years, but you bonded for 20. How would you work in the real world doing something like that? So there's gonna be the
That's
issue
state of
of,
Illinois on there. They've been doing it with the pensions forever, so,
yeah. But this is a physical asset
yeah.
that's supposed to tie out to a timeline.
Right.
So it would defy all budgeting to do.
So going back to this, so on engineering services, you guys will have a number embedded.
Yep.
What about the other line items? I mean, we don't have Rebuild Illinois. We have
Well, so all three of those line items really are roads.
And we don't have grants.
But
No, we do have grants,
Well, we do.
yes, but they can't go out, it'll be a few years, couple of years at least before we can use them.
Yes.
Because we got grants for Campton Hills Road, and I think there's a couple.
But they're not in this.
Not this, they're two
Okay.
budgets away,
Yeah,
at least,
Okay.
which is good, cause then we
Yeah.
have the money to buy cost share.
So we know grants are coming, but the state has deferred that for 2 years.
Well, you gotta wait in your
Okay.
queue, there's a
It's just-
queue to get in it, and we need that advanced knowledge, because they might pay 75 or 80% of that. Say it's 5 million, you know, it's great to have a grant, but then we have to come up with our 20% match, which is a significantly larger than our 700,000 we're annually coming up with.
20% of, in your example, 5 million.
Because if they do Campton Hills, if that's, I'm just,
that road is bad.
and it's long.
Well, it was granted, the grant proposals were put in two different sections. So there's a section from LaFox to Town Hall, and then Town Hall to Anderson, and Town Hall to Anderson was the first one that got the grant.
What was that estimate cost, engineering estimate? It had to be, both of them together could be,
I don't know if HR Green has done it yet, because
Yeah.
they started with it and they did, and the board authorized core samples.
yeah.
And I think some of that is done. Obviously, they probably have to revise it a little.
Yeah, so we'll look and see what we can do and have a more robust discussion with HR Green, so we're ready for that aspect of 2 years out. Cause it's gonna really drive the train of, are we gonna be able to salt away money and not do something for 1 year or 2 years and then have our money to make our match? Cause the match could be $2 million, guys. To get 5, you might have to spend 2. That happens in villages across the region all the time. And it will be,
That's a,
Maybe we should rethink that quota money, huh?
Yeah. Well, but we've got a plan for it.
we gotta get the real numbers from the
Right.
engineer.
But we could, if it's 3 years out, we could get on an amortization program, putting it in, we park it some in the capital fund.
Mhm.
Yes. But
But-
we have to know what the
Right,
numbers are
but-
first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's,
So Kim is right, they've done some work and we'll have to see if HR Green's got engineer estimates.
I think there are.
Yeah,
And
there has
it's
to
in
be,
the
a-
packet somewhere.
yeah. There has to be,
I would
because,
think you would have to, just to get the grant.
yes, you do. So I have to pull that from HR Green. So the good news is there's grant, and somebody's gonna pay 80% of fixing the road, but we
But we
gotta come
gotta
up
pick
to
the
20%. And
Still,
the positive news, it's 3 years out, so we can plan.
Right.
yeah, but if we don't, if we don't have it in the budget to escrow, right, put it in the general fund, how are we gonna plan it out 3 years in advance? In other words, if we know we're getting a grant, we know we have to cover some of it, shouldn't we be setting money aside, as you mentioned now?
Otherwise, we're losing a year.
Right. And I mean, I don't know where there's room in there, right? That's the other challenge, unless it's coming from the capital, the 300 grand, right?
And that's where Tim and I said the roads, we have to spend more time on, because we don't have all the information yet to have, and we're really gonna have to have a pretty philosophical debate on this, and I think that's why John wanted to come to the meeting a couple meetings ago.
Oh, sure, and we haven't had a public works meeting because of the holidays and the weather, I think.
And you get the engineer's last number,
Yeah,
so,
Yeah.
we need to have a finance road committee meeting together with you guys and
to touch about
map out a plan,
for 3
and then
years
go to
out.
the board.
Yes.
And we could do that after the budget's been approved?
Well, no, we gotta do it even though we're having a joint meeting on the 5th, the budget isn't gonna be done and have a public hearing to present to the public and to the taxpayers, until April.
April.
The April meeting, the first meeting in April.
So what's the
So why are we
March?
pushing that before we have these numbers and before we actually hammer these things?
We can have another budget meeting with you on just the road capital program. And then take that to the board before the April, what's the first Tuesday?
meeting for?
That's what, I don't understand.
See, I think we could delay this joint meeting.
Was that a board, that was a finance committee? We already said,
No, that was, we always have a March meeting that's a joint meeting with the board to present to the board, our recommendations.
some of those were.
But there was, Mark made it because we thought we were gonna be far enough along on this budget that we would be ready on the 5th of March.
I would suggest you not do it next week.
We can keep
We
defer
did
to
it,
the
Can we do the
19th.
second
So,
one?
second,
Yeah, because we had actually,
Kick
in
it
the
to the
last
second.
meeting, we both said that we couldn't be available, it may have just been.
but
next
it
week.
was set before that
Yeah.
happened.
Right,
Yeah, well, why don't we just defer it till the 19th?
I would defer it to the second meeting, and then by then, maybe try to get together with the other committee to figure out the roads.
Yeah, that's probably a smart idea, but mainly because the roads are, that's the issue.
That's the big issue.
It is.
And my big issue with roads is it 250, 350, 450, and you hear different things from Mike Millette and from what Elburn pays, and I think all those numbers should be explained, and are all reds equal on that map? I don't know. They're all, of course they're not. So you hear the big numbers, oh my God, 14 miles or whatever it was, last week you showed it, 14 miles of red,
45.
45. Okay, but what I'm saying.
45 out of 96, or whatever the average
This
is.
is-
But the point is, those numbers are everywhere, 250, 350, and 450, so that's the number you gotta lock down, I think. At least that's what I'm gonna do.
Well, at least
When I'm
on
the board, I'm gonna
Anderson specifically, because that's where the grant is gonna be and our match is gonna be. And if we're taking, here's the thing, right? If we're taking state money through the feds, guess who gets to make the standard of what you rebuild it at?
The state.
They're not gonna do the 200,000 overlay job. It's gonna be the full depth,
Well, on Campton Hills Road, you cannot do that.
because it is failed, so.
Yeah, that will.
There isn't,
a sub base.
There isn't, yeah, I don't know what you wanna call what's underneath there, but it's not.
I mean, there's no question there's 450. I'm not saying there isn't, please don't.
So that's, we're gonna have to be very specific.
They're all not
on it.
450.
They're
It
not.
wasn't very- yeah.
If we were in a perfect world, they would all be around 400, but we're not, don't have those revenues, so we're gonna have to make some compromises.
You might not need a 450 road in a neighborhood either.
No, you
You
wouldn't.
do
No
have to,
way.
you do have to consider now the heavy truck traffic and the electric vehicles. You know, an electric vehicle weighs at least 1,000 pounds or better more than a fuel vehicle.
So what I read is what, 25% more, whatever that is, depending on the size vehicle, right? So,
Yep, the
And the garbage
scavenger, the
trucks.
scavenger trucks are the hardest thing on our roads. In the
Well-
suburb. But the garbage guys.
Those and the garbage trucks
garbage trucks
themselves.
are the biggest.
Do you, I don't know if you know what they do.
Yes, everybody, it's
Yeah.
Stop and go.
stop and go.
Yeah, but they use their emergency brakes to make the stop. So what it does is it peels the asphalt forward.
What is it, what?
Garbage trucks, you can hear
Garbage
them.
truck drivers. Yeah. It quite literally slides that top layer.
On a bad road.
Well, I mean, I think the issue becomes, and I'll echo, somewhere along, we've been doing this and talking roads for at least the last 10 years. And I don't think anyone has actually sat down with a comprehensive plan of how much it's gonna cost, how we should be taking the ones that we get grants for, and how, you know, how we're going to fund those long-term, and establish some priorities that everybody buys into, so that we know what direction we're going, instead of this helter-skelter, how much cash do we have in this fund so we can spend it?
Right.
I don't even remember going back 10 years. I think it was like, wasn't it 3 years ago?
No, it was
3 years ago, you had
We
you
had
had a
a
5-year
full-
capital plan. That was when the first time it was
So we did
discussed.
the full engineering report was
5 years.
it been
Right,
5?
but we get in arguments over 250, 350, 450, and everybody points fingers and.
You're right.
So,
Yeah,
and we don't have a good, part of the pun, roadmap on how to do this, right? We need a roadmap.
Well, go to the slide I had you create, so we can flesh that out, because we didn't finish that last time, because the Irish were getting late at night.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Temper-
apologize, I should have done a better job of
Tempers are-
reining that in.
Okay.
But this is the miles of,
Yeah. We saw this last week.
yeah,
Yeah, that
but
was
we-
really good.
and that's where we got to we'd love to get to $1 million of funded, realizing that worst case, it could be 2 million unfunded if we use the 400,000 lane mile to repair it, worst case. But talking to Scott from HR Green and just having the quick drive-throughs and looking at the ones that are getting eligible for grants, that's what we have to understand too. He's put in to get Danker listed as an eligible road for a grant. It never has been in the history of the township or otherwise. Cause it's gotta meet certain standards of use and trucks. Our Campton Hills it obviously has met the criteria to be grant eligible. We don't have that many roads in the village that are grant eligible, that are not a county or a state road. So Campton Hills may be the only one that actually ever gets that 80-20.
I think town hall.
Town hall might too.
And it does a favor. It does us a favor if we share the maintenance costs and build costs on those with the township.
Or another political entity
Yes.
that rates them higher with the council of governments that do
Why
this.
Anderson Road was one of those.
Yeah. And
Who do they pair with for that community?
The Campton
Township?
Township, Highway Township, yeah.
yeah, so out in Plato Township, if there's a road out there,
Yeah.
it might as well. But don't know that we have McDonald out there, not really.
No, because I think we end.
Yeah.
McDonald ends there, but there's some other stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's a movement to try to get McDonald to be a county road again. I don't know how successful that would be. That'd be great.
Maybe we could do something about that.
For us who live off of McDonald Road, it would be great.
Well, for this budget purpose, it'd be
It'll be
very,
very
very
good.
good. But in any case, it's not an emotional issue as much as it feels like it. It's gonna be a math problem with the engineers once we get more fidelity with HR Green's robotics updated report. Because it's, folks, if you go in because you think you broke your finger and you do an x-ray, do you argue with the doctor that the x-ray's wrong? You don't. You got, the robotics report is gonna tell us whether the underpinnings of the road are bad or not. You're gonna know
Right.
mathematically whether you got a 200,000 fix or a recommended
Yeah,
400.
except my only comment is not all 14 miles are exactly the same on the road. And are all the oranges the same? There's degrees of orange. Some just got into the orange, some are getting closer to red. All I'm saying is,
Yes.
yeah, we can't make it quite as, I wish it was exact as you say, but like I said, I gotta learn more. I gotta understand.
Well, the engineer's gotta present more detail,
Detail, yeah, that's
is all.
We
From
had
the
a-
robotics.
You guys were involved, we had a full engineering report, you're saying 5 years ago. I think
It was a 5-year
5 years.
plan, yeah.
it was 5 years ago when they did, wow.
I've heard 5, but I've also said that 3 years ago, we developed a 5-year plan, is what I was told.
I think it was 3.5, but the 5-year plan was designed, but,
Never
Yes.
implemented.
well, some of it has.
We funded some.
Yeah. And a lot of that was the robotics edition and things like
I
that.
guess where I'm,
So the accuracy is 3.5 years ago, you put together a 5-year plan for the first time. A capital, and you didn't get into the debate I started to have with Michael and Tim, but people didn't really hear it because those guys, the Irish guys, were too loud. Is that you've got funded and unfunded in your capital plan. I'm trying to lighten things up this week, so. But the reality is the numbers you've got is 650 to 750 unless we do revenue enhancements of some kind, or worst case for the village politically is to do it bond to get caught up. But then you still have to make the
that's the
decision.
only option. Revenue, from a revenue enhancement standpoint, right? What do we look, we've talked about before, when we look at restaurants, liquor and gas, it's less than 100 grand probably.
Yeah, you're not gonna,
Yeah.
And the streaming could be the biggest one, but we're
Right.
still researching that. But they have to, the board has to vote to do it, and here's the other thing. You vote to do it, we do the ordinances with the lawyer, and they vote them in May and June. Because there's a deadline of like June 15th or 18th to the IDOR, the Illinois Department of Revenue. And then they put you in the queue and you start getting the revenue
When
January
we look
next year.
at, so we're looking at stream, no one's ever given us an idea of what that would be. I know when we first started this, we were all kinda like, hey, we were literally 15 years ago, giddy that we can get revenue from Comcast and AT&T, which has kinda gone away, right? We didn't anticipate that, and that was a kind of a windfall. And we see that dwindling or diminishing over time because
Streaming.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm assuming the villages are already charging for streaming, right? No? Or is there everybody out there looking at it? Other villages?
Other villages are doing it.
Yes.
This village is not.
Is it, what's the detriment to the village to do that? We didn't have any detriment when we started negotiating with Comcast. It was just money.
Optics, that's about it. Optics from the citizens.
So I guess what I'm interested in is, what does the income from streaming look like? I know it's not gonna be enough, but is it 100? Is it 150? Is it 200?
We extrapolated 60,000 if we compared our size and downed it from Evanston, Illinois. But a smaller community of only 3,500 residents in East Dundee is 120,000. I guess they had a lot of bars and restaurants that are probably streaming and paying a bigger fee maybe. Is all I can figure because per capita
Then they
wise,
have a higher rate, right? I mean, what's the rate? What does the rate look like?
it's a different rate if you got a bar or restaurant, obviously.
What is
Better
it? Is it
residents.
cents on the? I mean, how they bill for that? Or charge tax for that?
I don't have the
Yeah,
perfect.
I don't even know how you measure the streaming.
well, the city of Chicago does it, right?
Yeah, it's a percentage of the gross, you know.
Of the total
Chicago,
gross.
right.
That's
Of the gross revenue by their streaming services, but there's 1 million streaming services, so you have this.
Yeah,
Our
there's-
contract is right? Yeah, I mean, each one's individual,
Yes.
Hulu, Netflix, right?
Right.
And
Then
they-
again, all those streaming services are coming through, internet.
ASPs.
ISPs, and that's how they can capture.
And then they put the charge to them, and then they must kick it back to us.
So if we charge ISP, it's their job to allocate it to the
Yeah,
other services.
what I understand from the communities that do it, there is not like a line in your, like on your phone, you've got different services that
Right.
is there. There won't be a line on the Comcast or a streaming Hulu that the Village of Campton Hills.
No,
is
it won't
next
mention
to.
Campton Hills, but it's buried in whatever.
It's buried in.
Excise taxes.
You
or
can't, you
whatever.
can't, you can't do that significant. I guess we're,
But Timothy, we're back at, well, whether it's $100,000 or
It's changed.
60,000 or just,
that one could be. a
It's
couple hundred
immaterial.
ago. Well, I guess, here's where I'm at. So, you know, a number of years ago, maybe it was 5, I remember the roads was brought to our attention for the first time, right? In my opinion. And I remember having a lot of conversations, and we realized that we need to start allocating assets to the roads. And we did, actually. We remember there was no contribution to roads, and then we started allocating every year, right? To the best of our budgetary constraints. And yet, the discussion has been, look, we have enough here somewhere we can fund these roads. The other half of the discussion is we don't have near enough. And I remember 5 years ago, and I'm not arguing with anyone, I didn't understand the math. I did not see how the village could meet these expectations, which we saw these numbers years ago, 5 years ago, how we had the resources to meet those expectations. So the real question is we had to raise revenue. And then I have other former members who said there's always money in the budget, we can find it. And that's where I'm really confused. I mean, do we have it, do we not have it?
You guys have been here for 17 years, there is what there
We've
is.
been in community 17?
Yes.
17 years.
Jeez, 5 years, 17, it seems like yesterday. I've been here 15. So I guess that's an open question to the whole group.
but I don't think as a group, with the finance committee for what I've been on, Timothy, we've never addressed the funding aspect of this. We always got off on, is it 175,000 or 250? Mike, you know, a former administrator.
Now it's gone up, now we're into the
Right.
450.
I mean, we always had a diversion.
You never got the total picture
Right.
of the, what I tried to drive you to is
The
what,
magnitude of what we're looking at.
yes.
It's a significant problem, but there's still no more money.
Right. MFT,
Well,
there was good
We did get
intentions.
some grants. that we-
There was, to
Grants,
your
right.
point, Tim, there was
Fair.
good intentions with the MFT would be enough to maintain the roads at the same standard that was existing in the village before incorporation. Because, of course, the MFT dollars were going to the township, and the township was managing it under that level of government instead of the village.
Mhm.
But, as you know, you were falling behind there too, and just nobody knew it.
but taking that, we all knew that we only had $400,000 in the MFT.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it didn't compute.
But it was never put down
No,
how much
right.
it didn't compute.
Well, that's why the robotic decision was a big decision, to find out exactly the size of the prize or the size of the cost, and.
Yes, to look at your total roads
Right.
and say,
Yeah,
this
we
road
can
is
do it, right?
250 or this one's
We just do
400.
the same thing all over.
It was 5
Yeah,
years.
they've deteriorated, so
Even for, so
the numbers you're looking at is the first set of,
that's 5 years ago.
well, I think it was,
That's tweaked.
Let's tweak that.
That's tweaked. That's Green's HR.
So, I guess, we can keep kicking the can, but I think, this is my opinion. We have to look at streaming. You have to present to, at least share with the board that I feel that we have to look at the streaming. We have to bring in money, right? And it's one way or the other, everybody has to understand that. Then, the next piece is, the referendums, that's gotta be a board decision. And I don't think it's our position to recommend that you do it at this stage, but I think.
Were you talking about bond?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should.
What other
Look at
what
I
other
don't
revenue
see the
enhancement?
board going for that.
No, I
Not
agree.
until we
None of us-
explore other enhancements first.
Yeah, right,
Well, so let me ask that question. What enhancements do we have that will get us there, besides grants, streaming, and the local
Food and beverage,
food and beverage?
food and beverage, what's that, percent, or whatever?
2%, 3%.
2%.
Is that what they normally do?
Mhm.
Does Geneva have one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
St.
go
Charles-
to these places, I
They
don't
do.
pay attention.
St. Charles is one of the leaders in,
They charge them. And they have an alcohol tax that's 7.5% just on itself or something. It's extremely high.
Oh.
If you go to a restaurant and have a drink, there's a St. Charles extra. Benny's was in St. Charles. Benny's
Right.
deliberately moved to Geneva across the road.
Oh, I never knew why they moved.
Strictly
Now I
to
know.
avoid the St. Charles alcohol tax.
Liquor tax.
Wow.
It's huge.
That's another, there's 4 things that you could consider. Streaming is the biggest dollar amount. Liquor license, like the Benny's you just described, at your package stores.
Well, they didn't know it was
And-
it was a tax they were charging
There's
on
a
sales.
tax on sales of liquor. And then your food and beverage. And then what was the other one, Tim, I had,
About 3.
what was my 4th?
Fuel gas.
Gas, a penny or 2 pennies on a gallon of gas.
Which you got one station, I don't know what they're paying.
Yeah, to me, you're hurting that station.
Well, that station
It's high to begin with, right? I don't-
charges more than any other station in
Yeah,
the
I
entire
don't-
area.
I don't.
And it's because
I
part of it
just
is
don't
because
know.
it's probably, they can obviously get away with it because of the location. But, and you know, we've had a discussion a couple years ago. I'm willing to bet the majority of the service that station renders is for people outside of Campton Hills.
Oh, yes.
Because of 64 coming and going,
Yeah, it's highway.
right? And 'cause it's full every morning. And
It is.
And they're always, anyway.
Well,
So
I
even,
think-
even though I think, I mean, we talked before, we can recommend it's inconsequential, like you said, no matter what, it's inconsequential. Maybe all added up, even with the streaming, you get 2.
Maybe, best case,
That-
everything in.
So that's a half a mile a year.
Could be your funds building up to the grant.
Depending on your
It
dollar.
could be your fund, there you go. It could be that, we got a spot.
Put me on a third one?
That could be the funding towards, the escrow
Each
account
and our
towards the
20,
funding,
yeah,
or towards
Towards the grants.
so our matching fee. that
Yeah,
we're gonna
put that aside every year for whatever the grants.
I mean, no one, John knows more than anybody. I don't think anybody in this world, everybody in this world, even people who don't know me, know I hate taxes. I hate it because they're wasteful.
You hate what, I'm sorry?
Taxes,
Oh, yeah.
they're wasteful.
Well,
And there's no
you know.
accountability. So, we've seen that, you know, we live in a state that proves that. But at some point, we need to start messaging this throughout the community, right? And I know you guys, that's what we're working on. And I think we need to try to capitalize on what we can within the means of the, you know, the village, and maybe apply that towards that grant. You know,
Well, I think-
it's still not gonna be enough to get where you need to be. If
No,
it's
it's
200
not
a year.
enough, but I think putting that money toward the grant, because then at least you're saying, you're basically revenue sharing. Yeah, we're taking your dollars, true, but we're putting with 80%
Right.
to get stuff done for all of us.
Right.
I think that's a good sell.
That's a sell.
And
That's a sell.
we would look very politically foolish to have an opportunity to fix a major road that's an arterial at 80 cents on the dollar, and we couldn't come up with our 20 cents.
So,
I agree with
I
that.
may just saying that and taking that off rails, but I've had this conversation for 5 years or more, and it doesn't seem like we're actually making any real, I should say, we have made progress with our 5-year plan, and we have, I don't know how many miles of roads we've repaired,
We did,
you know, we're over 10.
last year, or, well, I guess 2023, so.
We did well.
Yes, we did.
We also
We
had,
did about
we also
5
had the federal grants. that
We
we
have federal money.
Some of it,
Some of it was, a
on
lot of it-
Anderson.
Anderson had the grant, and that was also a shared road. We didn't have to pay for the entire stretch of Anderson either, because the township has part
We
of
got
it.
COVID money too, weren't we able to allocate that?
Not, you COVID money,
It wasn't COVID, there was something else we thought that we allocated towards roads. Either way, it was,
They'll rebuild Illinois.
that's it. So, but those monies, that's not, you know, a recurring opportunity.
that's true. That's true. Well, I think, John, we're at the point where Tim and I gotta do some more work with HR Green and the Public Works Committee and put a little more fidelity on our numbers and what they're gonna be on that 3 years out, or is it 4 years out? That we gotta come up with our 20%, and what is our 20% number? So we can,
So we can figure out how we're gonna fund it
yes,
when we need the dollars.
I think, what I would like, and I don't know, timing, is, your best recommendation or estimate on revenue from
Yes.
all the components we've talked about.
we're looking into that a little more clearly with some,
Do you have streaming, John?
I think we need to have that. The revenue is a good thing, but I think we need to tie the revenue, the estimated net revenue, to scenarios, starting with this is our issue. What are we gonna do with the funding of the grants, et cetera, and get our hands around the entire situation with.
so we know what our 20% number is it $1
We need the
million?
20%, plus we need to say, one, we can just continue where we are today, and this is what you're gonna get, guys. Or two, this is, if we just go on with revenue, that we know from franchises, that might get us this. And the third one is, this is the ideal, this is Mark's ideal, maybe there's one in between.
Yeah.
And just become brutally honest once and all, and take it to the board.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
they gotta make the
Total
decision,
agreement.
but we've gotta give them some ammunition also.
Total agreement. And,
And if that means
there may not be
the
an appetite
bonds,
for other
they need,
income, but at some point.
that may be
it's
the only
inevitable.
solution.
I think it's inevitable. I cannot figure out the numbers any other way.
And I'm gonna tell you that the roads are a powder keg in this community. My neighbors complain all the time.
Well, and I think the issue is people pay 14 or 25,000 in property tax, and they think
What, you are-
they
yeah,
think the
they're-
village is
Right.
hitting them for a good percentage of that,
That's it.
and the percentage is zero.
Right, we know that. I think,
But I don't think the common
Most
taxpayer
people
does.
don't.
oh, in Campton Hills?
I mean, I've certainly explained it when I
New
would get
folks
up.
coming in don't understand.
I've had
They
five.
The village has never once raised, or couldn't raise a tax.
No
Not
taxes.
another-
Regardless of
well,
how, even if that was a campaign promise of people, we can't do it.
Because there is no tax levy.
Right.
Right, you'd have to take it to the people.
Right.
Yep.
And that's, I know that's,
I can tell you what happened.
But you gotta take it to
But-
the people again,
Right.
because we can't fix the damn
You know,
roads. If they
I'm
want
gonna
it,
be honest-
we
I'm
don't
gonna
have
be
it.
really honest again, if the board chooses not to do that now or in the future, then that resides on the board's decision not to take it to the public. But at some point, the roads
Absolutely. They
are, at
have
some
to be.
point,
Yeah.
the roads are going to be in a place where we can't even catch up, right? At some point, if they're all red. So at some point, we're going to have to, at some point, a village board is going to have to take a stance. And if they choose not to, fine, but I think we have to do our job and make these recommendations.
That's what
Yeah,
I-
but if they
In
choose,
conjunction with the Public Works Committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I
Exactly,
agree.
we don't have, right,
I agree.
we worked very well
I
together a
would,
couple of years ago, we got a ton of information.
I mean,
We
not
figured
to
out how
take a
to
stand
count
to
through
me
a
is,
few.
not to take a stand is not an answer, I don't think.
You guys,
The board's gotta take a stand somewhere.
Like it or not, and it's
But
a
in,
tough pill.
in fairness, the staff has never brought a number to the board.
Oh,
In true,
that's what I'm not trying to, can you guys help me with the history?
No.
Why hasn't this happened? Why hasn't?
Because I don't think we have a solution, Craig.
there's-
we haven't fully identified the full scope of the
I don't
problem.
think there is a solution.
No, I think they haven't
Honestly,
identified
there
the
is a
full
solution.
problem
Nobody wants-
to come
Nobody
up with a
wants to-
solution.
Hear it, yeah.
well, when we first found,
Understanding
when
of
The problem.
the situation first came to our attention, and I think we did, I understood it, we had numbers very much like this 5 years ago.
That's what it sounds
And
like.
we were told, and we did set out assets aside, we started doing as much of the repair work as we could in that fiscal budget. And then we got the fund, what do you call it,
Rebuild.
Yeah, Rebuild Illinois, doing a good job of that. And, we got some other asset money, and they're like, oh, wait, we just picked up more than we anticipated on the roads, right? So we're not ahead of schedule, but we're certainly further along than we anticipated. But, right, like I said, I have never figured out the numbers, and I you know, it's,
I do believe last year, Tim, that the administrator and the president presented to the MFT and the little enhancements you were doing of the monies left over was gonna get to a 20-year program to fix the roads at the 200,000 number.
I apologize, sir, I'm not a patient man. And I just wanna figure out ways to make recommendations so we can, the board can make
I
decisions.
know that they used 200,000, but I didn't think that we were gonna, that they came to a conclusion we were gonna fix the color scheme.
Well, they didn't have the color scheme last time.
Oh, we've always had a scholarship.
We've always had the-
They did put miles to it.
But that was never,
Well, and
No,
the
there
bigger
were
reports.
I mean, let's just be honest, and I'll try to say this because I'm on board, but, you know, let's face it, we have enough money to do some Band-Aids, quite honestly, but we don't have enough
Right,
to really help the patient
Right,
live long.
we agree on that.
So how do we either get a bunch of Band-Aids that really can shore this thing up, which we can't, we gotta fix it, and so I think you gotta be honest and try to look at everything.
And there's no, I don't think there's, and I wanna be clear, there's no real, I don't think there's any fault.
Agree to it.
When we
Fault?
start, I don't know,
Oh,
I don't think
no.
there's any, when the village was founded, the roads were covered by the township. They were covered by the township, it wasn't a village expense, and that phased out, I don't know when that phased out, but the township would stop. At some point, they transferred that responsibility to
The
us.
county used to do the engineering for the township
Correct.
and the village, therefore, in 2011 or so, it ended, the engineering. But they didn't pay for, the county never paid for paving your roads, the township had that cost,
Township,
yes.
yeah, right, but it wasn't, we didn't budget, we didn't have it, we didn't know we had it, and then one day we had it.
Yeah.
So that's my perception of this, my,
I think that's right.
and.
In the
again,
initial
my
founding
perception is my
build,
reality, so I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated, John, I can tell.
no, I just think that we need to have alternatives and what practically can be done with the dollars we have, or how we anticipate some, and what, how many dollars and what we need to get the ideal situation. And you know,
We're not gonna have that by the 19th,
no,
but I think we need to start messaging.
but our budget, but the budget realistically for that we're working on isn't gonna be able to deal with the bigger problem.
Well, but
Right.
capital
You're-
budgeting, but I'm trying to do is in this, say this is the current year's capital budget is X. The out years of years 2, 3, 4, and 5 should be detailed from the committee with enough fidelity from working with Public Works and Engineering, so you know the scope of year
Our
2 through
requirement for our
5
capital fund requirement.
for the
That's
out
what we need
years.
to do.
So we
We need to
figure
go
out
back
what
to
our
a capital
next-
plan that's truly a capital
by the
plan.
19th, Ken, we should be able to define with the HR agreement what our 20% in 28, is it projected?
No,
28 or
it's sooner
29?
than that, because we got those grants last year.
Yeah, but I thought it was 2028 it would get constructed.
The construction might be there, but the money we might see prior to that,
Yeah,
so that.
How many miles potentially in grants?
and we're talking about Canton.
So 3, 4?
Well, this is-
How many,
Yeah.
how many miles? I'm just curious.
So we'll do it,
So I mean, that's okay.
by the
Yeah,
19th, we will
again-
get fidelity on that and get our 20% of what it
It's
is.
huge.
So you can't.
And it's split up into
So
two.
we got 10 in red. So we got
I
10
only
in
have the
red.
one section for it.
Fair enough.
So we'll get you more fidelity on that, and then try to, with the robotics, define how many miles are in the 400,000 fixed, or the engineering recommendation of you could do the 200.
Well,
Where does Canton Hills Road start? On the east side?
That we're responsible for?
Right out here off,
No, it goes actually, it goes further east, so, have you ever seen the orange signs with the ones,
It's
the I and the O's? That
before,
stands for in St. Charles, out of St. Charles.
no, never saw that.
So look for them, yeah.
What are they?
They're orange, they're about this big, and it has an I/O.
where are they?
They're alongside the road, and it shows you what's,
near
what is St. Charles,
Garfield Farms. in that
and
area.
Oh,
what is not St. Charles.
Oh.
Never seen that.
So,
I don't pay
we
attention
start,
to road signs.
so about, I'd say maybe 30 to 50 feet from the Boy Scout, disc golf place, west of
Oh,
there,
yeah.
is where we start.
So we start west of the disc golf cart.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the,
And it goes all the
St.
way,
Charles Park
and it goes
District.
all the way to, where Campton, looks like
Anderson.
Emergent
Anderson.
And tease it.
Okay, so,
That's a long section of road.
And it's-
oh, yeah.
Now, we've done the section,
I'm doing the mile right now.
how long ago was that? We rejuvenated it a year and a half ago. It was paved, I wanna say 3 years, 4 years, maybe? The section from the disc golf to Campton Hills Road. That is a relatively new, that's one of the roads that should be light greenish, although it's got some spots where the freeze thaw really destroys it because of the trees. So, you know, if you go down there after we've had significant rain, it's wet for 4 days afterwards.
Cause AKA, when they built the road, they didn't build drainage into it.
Well, again, and they just laid stuff on top of the dirt road that was originally there
Understood, yeah.
when everything was farmed. So,
All right, so no joint meeting.
Not the 5th, but then we'll push it to the 19th. Does that work for everybody's calendar?
It'll work for mine.
Cause we need to kinda have the joint meeting, so then we can have the budget meeting officially at the board, to have a public hearing on the first week in April.
but we could, if we had to pay for that, and then we were looking at trying to accomplish 4 miles a year, that would be the only roadway that we get done.
It'd
If
be
we
the
didn't
only
have the
road.
grants.
Right.
Well, if we didn't have the grants.
And I think there's roads worse than that,
4 miles of the salt.
And I-
Where,
than Campton Hills Road.
Oh, yeah,
We gotta get our heads on
Woodlands
it.
Drive.
It's the man.
Well, no, it's a good fix for 4 miles, but
I
you
know,
got
but-
another 44 right behind it.
With not the 80%.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the.
But to Jim's point, a lot of those would be in subdivisions that wouldn't need the full depth and reclamation of 400,000 a mile. It would be
Yeah,
closer to,
but the
Two.
number's still,
There's number still, so you cut it in half.
yeah, still,
it's so bad.
Still bad.
it's still
and
bad.
no 80%.
Yeah.
That's the big number that we're.
We put a- we-
50.
So we're not gonna look at, for roads right now, that's a future recommendation, we're gonna work on some proposals. So that's not necessarily part of this budget, right now. So I guess my question is, on
Well-
this budget you guys have put together,
Yes.
is there a line items that give you guys some concern or heartburn? Is there something here that you would like us to be aware of that, or are you comfortable that between our conversations over the last few months, that this is you're pretty comfortable with this budget?
I'm comfortable that we will stay out of the
Red?
red.
Good. I like red in some cases, but not when it comes to
But
budget.
we won't have a lot of latitude for a bad Warrior year or a bad, boiler went out, we
Well,
gotta fix it.
we need to
So
message
you're
that.
figuring revenues at 95%?
Yeah, always have, from day one.
So that's
And what about expenditures? Do you?
We got as close to
110.
So if we just take the gross numbers,
That's a sandcastle.
then you had 93 at the bottom. If I move that 95 back up to 100, we pick up another 165. So our cushion, at least in this part of the budget, is 250,000.
Should be.
How'd you come
And
across that?
we transferred 300K out as part of this.
So the 95%, if we went to 100%.
I just went to 100.
No, just
Not on
to
paper.
put
I
pride.
got you, I got you.
I understand what you're saying.
So if I got
Comfort
300,
level, Tim.
plus I got 300,000 that we transferred out, that's to the capital fund, that's funding money sitting over there. And where's the contingency, Tim?
There's a line item
125.
there, 125.
Okay, another 125, so, I mean, you start adding those up.
That's why I can confidently say we won't go
Right,
over that.
I mean, that's the point.
So the 5% was always our
Push.
elected official cushion.
Yeah, the other challenge I had in my prior life, it would be, is there any fat in the expenditures that can be squeezed?
Police, yeah.
I'm just saying.
We've been frugal from day one. I mean, we made it through COVID without, not COVID, we made it through the financial crisis in the black. And a lot of towns were going red, deep red, right?
Yeah.
Spending their
Wow.
their budget contingency number of 20% of their budget.
Right.
They had to go for.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I mean, my opinion,
Well, it's really not
I mean,
directed
well,
at
my
the budget
response-
committee, it's really directed at the people that are providing.
I think there's always room, but at some point, right?
Well, you don't want to
we've always
squeeze
been
a lot
pretty
of
darn
turnout.
We've been
But
marginal
if you
all
spend
along.
if we put our focus on the expenditures, which I think we have, we're gonna lose sight that eventually to fund projects like the roads, you got to get to the revenue. You gotta,
Exactly.
you can only cut so much, whether
Absolutely.
you're a tax exempt organization or if you're taxable.
You can't cut yourself across the
If you don't have any revenue,
Yeah.
We agree. We all
Tim?
agree.
it doesn't matter.
Tim, do the number. If we cut on our total expenditures, we cut, say, 15%.
Well, I mean,
What number
well,
would that be?
before I do that, let me just add this.
That,
You asked about the expenditures.
Yeah.
that one makes sense.
And earlier in the meeting, we calculated 49% of the general fund expenditures are police.
Yep.
And the last meeting, the police chief came to the meeting and said, we cannot get policemen because our starting salary is below 60.
Right.
So we worked on bringing that up a little bit,
Yeah.
and we didn't bring it up that
That is
much,
our
but he's confident we can at least get some policemen in.
Police
So
is our budget.
I think we're kind of close to the bone already when it comes to
And we
cutting.
actually cut 200,000 from the police budget because going full-time,
Correct.
going from part-time to full-time
Operational
actually was
efficiency.
more efficient.
Yes.
So so technically, if we were last year was an anomaly, I think, I hope,
Yes.
the police budget would have been 200,000 higher. We would be pushing 55%. No, even more.
But we gave some of that back with the 6% increase in
True.
pay, which
Sure.
which is the right answer, don't
Sure.
be- but it's a give and take. And I'll bet you if we went through
You're right on me too.
on the expenditures that we have, we're not gonna squeeze much out of it.
Listening to the chief last week, I was impressed with,
No, but even if your total expenditures,
No, I got
you
it.
did 10% cuts,
that's a big.
that's not gonna be a large number, guys.
That's a big
No,
difference.
it's not.
So, going back to my
And
It's
original,
not
doing
enough
that
to gain
process,
it.
we forget, we lose focus on what we should be looking at, and that's revenue.
got it. So going back to my question, anything that's causing your hair to stand on end? Panic attacks?
No,
Just having a 5-year capital plan and we've talked a lot about
Right.
that already.
For this budget, you guys are,
Yeah.
and by the way, this
We gotta have a quorum, so.
this is good, I appreciate it.
okay.
We usually don't get here this quick. Right, now, of course, it was easy because you just had to look at past expenditures.
I mean, I would be most disappointed in this budget if there was not some type of narrative that at least addressed that. You don't have to have the numbers for it, you don't have to have the revenue solution, but I think the citizens that read the budget need to know there are 95 miles and some of them are in bad condition.
And
And,
it's what she said.
and then I would take it one step further, that this is a priority, that the board and the finance committee and public works are all gonna work together to at least come up with, I don't know what the word is, solution, I'm not sure.
Well, a solution, but you need a story.
Story, yeah.
And
You
a
really
full-
need to tell a story.
full
So I would
You
add
gotta
that
paint
to
the picture, you gotta
your
paint the
narrative.
picture, and you gotta tell the story, and you don't wanna have their eyes gloss over with numbers, but the numbers have to be a part of that. But basically, you know,
I mean,
The
you've
key is-
had this before. The prior board members have known about the road situation.
oh,
It's not a surprise. It's just, we now need to help, bring the new board members up to speed. And then position this,
And in the update with the Public Works Committee, with the robotics, with the HR green,
And get the
to
right-
identify the problem and then.
denominator, denominator, and all that stuff, cause my eyes gloss over when I hear 450 all the time, but yet a subdivision doesn't need that, so we just gotta tell the story, and what is that number? And maybe it's not as bad as.
Well,
it's
and we'll
bad,
get the engineer to help
but it's
us
not.
Yeah.
make it a true math issue, and identify it that way too,
Exactly,
specifically.
well, it should be a true state of the village, right?
what, can you make,
This is the state of the
I've already got it on
village.
my calendar.
For the 19th,
Yeah, that way I'd have a quorum.
so we'll have the meeting on the 19th and get a little more fidelity with the different committee and the
Right, that sounds
engineers.
good.
Tim, are you happy with enough input so that you can actually have the budget?
Throw them in the
Go
rest
Yeah,
of the
give them
budget.
another, whatever you guys have next meeting.
Well, I wanna thank you. I appreciate this, I appreciate the budget, and I appreciate a copy tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I don't always have a chance to print it out.
I know.
I look at most of it on my phone, when I'm driving.
And when you do finalize it, we'll send it out to all the finance committee.
Sure.
Yeah, so we have it before the.
Yeah, we'll try to get it to you next week.
And is that meeting gonna be at 7, or, because in the past, we've started that one at 6?
Yeah, we would try to start it at 6 on the 19th, and we'll bring
You know,
it.
it'd be nice if you could keep, rather than move the time, seeing our next meeting is in joint,
Next
keep it at
question?
6, it'd be interesting. Right? If you get done 6.
John, we got a
Can I
question.
ask a question?
Before we,
The 14 miles that's in the extreme condition, is that documented? Where can I see that?
the robotics program that was paid for to look at the road surface from an engineering point of view.
Yes.
Yeah, that report,
It's listed by roads are listed.
Oh, yeah.
So where can I find it?
Every road has a color.
yeah, that report, has it been, the new one been updated to the Public Works Committee yet?
No, we haven't seen.
You've got the old one from 5 years ago.
Oh, you mean the 5-year plan?
Well,
No.
the original robotics
In other words,
report.
the original report, she's
robotics,
asking, which roads are red, orange, yellow, like.
No, I just care about red, right
Oh,
now,
yeah,
because that's all we
Yeah.
can afford.
yeah, we know.
Sorry.
That was.
I know our
3 years
budget.
There's a
ago.
report.
I'm like,
There's a report. The
But they're not-
question is where
And
it is.
those are different numbers now within.
Exactly, it wasn't that big.
So where do I find the correlation to the, like, extreme, poor, and moderate?
It'll be in the robotics report that he's gonna give to the Public Works, but I'm gonna get that before, hopefully by next Tuesday, so I can share it with the board.
Home somewhere.
It's an update of the original.
You guys are this is a hot mess. I've watched it for years, so I know you guys are in a very difficult situation, but I'm just curious what roads we're looking at as extreme or.
Yeah, we're gonna get the exact report, and it's, HR Green is, the check's in the mail, they told me, so by
I
next
think,
Tuesday.
I
For the
think
record, that
publicly-
wasn't a question, you're gonna scare away a finance committee member that just started, so. don't-
You know what?
I don't think it's.
No, I'm sorry, I walked in and I was looking at it, I'm like,
I was
okay.
just kidding.
John, do we need a motion?
Yeah, we do, I need a
No.
motion to adjourn.
Do you have any, is there any other business?
No,
No, it's a-
do you want?
So I move to adjourn the special meeting
You better
of the
second.
Finance Committee.
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn, all in favor? Aye. For adjourn.
Thank you all for all your hard work.
Well,
But-
it's the checks reward.
Yeah, look, check.
Kim, we're gonna
Sorry.
get.
Payback
HR
from the
Green
roads,
to
that's what we have on the roads.
I'd actually like to see that in advance of our meetings too.
Yes.
There's been times that he's presented to the board and I didn't have
Oh,
to.
was it, oh, I'm like.
And
I got emails from him yesterday and today, it's soon.
No,
Make the dollar problem go away.
So, cause he gave Tim and I a week ago yesterday, these numbers off the robotics report, the 14.
The 14 came out in your front books?
Yes.
so,
Because
I don't think they're.
the numbers are.
Band-Aids on it.